I'm about to show you an exercise that'll expose you to every triad shape that you could possibly find on the fretboard in major or minor. And it's something that you can run through just a minute a day and you'll still memorize these triad shapes like the back of your hand. Just be sure to stick around till the very end of the lesson because I've got a free gift for you and your guitar and you're both gonna love it. All right, so let's dive right into this exercise. So we're gonna be learning the triad shapes for an A major chord and its relative minor, an F sharp minor chord. And with just those two chords, we're gonna find every triad shape that you're gonna encounter on the fretboard, and it'll reflect both a major and a minor chord. Okay, so take for example, an A bar chord. We're gonna divide this up into chunks of 3, right? And we're gonna follow up the fretboard all of the triad patterns that follow. So we're gonna start here with this chunk of the strings. This is gonna be the high E string, B string, and the G string. And this first triad here, okay, if you take a look at that A bar chord shape, it's just this top fragment here, where you got your second finger on the 6th fret of the G string, and you got your first finger barring the 5th fret on the B and the high E strings. That's our first triad. So a triad is 3 notes, and the actual scale degrees that we're looking at the major third of A. Remember, this is an A chord, right? But the lowest note here is a third. It's not a root note. And then we have a 5th, and there's our root note. That's A, 5th fret on the high E string. So this type of triad is what's called an inversion. And the reason why it's called that is because the lowest pitch of the triad is not the root note. So it's inverted. So when it's the third, right, which in this case, the third is the lowest pitch note, that's called an A major triad in the first inversion. So when you run across a triad that starts with the third, it's called the first inversion. That's it. So just a fancy name to describe that it's a triad that starts with the third, right? So that's our first triad here. Now we're gonna move up the fretboard to this shape right here, which is just like a D chord. We're gonna start on the 9th fret of the G string with our first finger, third finger's on the 10th fret of the B string, and then our second finger's on the 9th fret of the high E string. And that right there is an A major triad, same as this, only this isn't in the first inversion, it's actually in the second inversion because the lowest pitch note here is a 5th. Now you don't have to know why, just take my word for it. That's the 5th of A, which happens to be this note right here, which is E, right? So the E is the 5th of A and C sharp is the 3rd of A, okay? But again, you don't really need to know that, just understand this shape, this D chord shape here, right? Which is right here, starting on the 9th fret, so 9, 10, 9. That right there is another A major triad. It's the same chord as this. This is a different inversion. It contains the same notes, but in a different order, starting with the 5th. And then we're gonna move up to find one more shape on this chunk of strings right here, which is 14th fret on the G string with your third finger, 4th finger's on the 14th fret of the B string, right? And then your first finger's on the 12th fret of high E. And that's just a good old regular A major triad because the first note, the lowest note, is an A, it's a root note. It's the same as this, right? Same as this. So we encounter the same 3 notes in all 3 of these shapes. We have 3rd, 5th root, 5th root 3rd, root 3rd, 5th. Same notes, just different order and different actual physical shape. So those are the 3 shapes that we're gonna encounter right here on this chunk of strings. And they're all A chords. So if I were to drone an A, right, low A string, you can hear that they all work together because they're all notes in the A major chord. Moving on to the next chunk of strings, we have the 7th fret on the D string, 6th fret on the G string, 5th fret on the B string. And that's just a good old regular A major triad because the lowest note is an A, it's the root note, right? A. Next up we have our next triad, which is A major in the first inversion. So it's third finger on the 11th fret of the D string, first finger on the 9th fret of the G string, and then our second finger on the 10th fret of the B string. And then finally, our last triad for this chunk of strings is right here, where we're just barring across the 14th fret on the D, G, and B strings. And if you might be wondering, like, why don't we keep going if there's more frets? Because you're actually gonna run into the exact same shape. So this exercise, everything I'm breaking down to you is to show you pretty much what every triad shape looks like when you're playing a major chord. And we'll get to minor chords too in a second. So we have this A major triad and then A major triad in the first inversion. And you could probably guess this one would be A major triad in the second inversion, right? It starts on a fifth. So we have root, third, fifth, root. And then here we have fifth, root, third. Same notes, just different order. And finally, we got one more chunk of the strings. We're going to be going from the G string to the D string to the A string, okay? So, and notice how with the starting triads we've been messing with, these are all little fragments of that A major bar chord, right? And then we have this one left, which starting on 7th fret with your 3rd finger, 4th finger's on the 7th fret of the D string, then your 2nd finger's on the 6th fret of the G string. And that right there is 5th, root, 3rd. So if it starts on a 5th, that would be an A major triad in the what inversion? I'm going to assume you said 2nd inversion. I'm pretty sure you did. You're smart. You got this. All right, so that's an A major triad in the 2nd inversion. And the next one on this chunk of strings is right here. It's an interesting finger pattern, but we're going to start with our 4th finger on the 12th fret of the A string. 3rd finger is on the 11th fret of the D string. 1st finger is on the 10th fret, or sorry, the 9th fret of the G string. It's a little bit of a stretch, and it's getting up there in the fretboard, you know? But this right here is a root, 3rd, 5th. So if it starts on the root, it's just a regular old A major triad, right? I would just call it regular, or just A major triad, right? Because it's not an inversion. Then finally, we got our last one here. Getting up there. These really test your intonation. This is a 66 Fender Mustang, and they're not known for their intonation, but it's doing pretty good. So right here what we have is the, what is that? The 16th fret on the A string with our 3rd finger. Then 1st finger is going to bar the 14th fret on the D and G. And we have right here a 3rd, 5th, root. So it starts on a 3rd. That would make this an A major triad in the 1st inversion. That's right. I know that's what you said. Okay, so I know we just went through a lot of information, but I'll just quickly recap. And of course, you can always rewatch, backtrack in the video and rewatch however many times you need to get it down. But we have, for the first chunk of strings, right, the top 3, we have these. And then for the middle 3, we have these. And the bottom 3, we have these. And in case you're wondering, why aren't we including the low E string? Well, if you do, you actually run into the same exact shapes. You run into this shape, which we've already got right here, and then this one, which we've got right here, right? And then this one, which we already got right here, sorry, in this chunk. So this is just to expose you to all of the possible finger shapes. And they all look different, but they're all the same chord. They're all A major, right? And then, sorry. I just got this guitar and it's a short scale and I'm still getting used to it, but man, it sounds nice. So, those are the major triad shapes. Just by using the single A major as our benchmark, we have found every single triad shape. That's what they all look like, okay? When you're dealing with a major triad that contains a root, a 3rd, which would be a major 3rd if we're talking about a major triad, and a 5th, right? So that's that. Oh, and real quick, if you're getting value out of this lesson, please do me a favor, hit that like button and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. It really helps us out and it lets us know that you want to see more lessons just like this one, which we'd be more than happy to give you. So thanks in advance, and let's get back to it. Now we're going to move on to a minor chord so I can show you all of the minor triad shapes. And we're going to be doing the F sharp minor chord, which is the relative minor of A major. And you'll see why, because it's nice to just have an exercise that also kind of can work musically, because that way it excites your ears as opposed to just being like just monotonous, just kind of playing, in sort of one dynamic. So this will be a fun way to actually add more spice to the exercise. But let me go ahead and show you each of these triads, starting with the first one here on the top chunk of strings, right? So high E, B, and G, we're going to be barring the 2nd fret with our 1st finger. That's an F sharp minor triad. It starts on a 3rd, And when you're dealing with minor triads, you'll have root minor third fifth. So it starts on the minor third, then there's the fifth, then the root. Second fret on the high E string and second fret on low E string, that's the F sharp root note. So if we're starting on the third, this would be an F sharp minor triad in the first inversion. That's right. All right, so there's that. Next up we have this, which is like a D minor shape, right? Remember how we had the D major shape for the A major chord? Now we're dealing with the D minor shape that we would normally see here, right? With a D minor chord, an open D minor chord. But here, this is an F sharp minor triad. So second finger on the 6th fret of the G string, third finger is on 7th fret of B, first finger is on 5th fret of high E. And this is 5th root third. Starts on the 5th. So this would be an F sharp minor triad in the second inversion. Yeah. All right. And then finally we have this shape, the staircase shape, which we've seen already. So in this case, we're on the 11th fret with our third finger on the G string. And then second finger is on the 10th fret of the B string. First finger is on the 9th fret of the high E string. And the root note here is our lowest pitch. That's an F sharp. So we have root third fifth. So that would just make this a regular old F sharp triad, F sharp minor triad. Yeah. So that's that for this chunk of strings. Moving on to our middle chunk here, which is starting from the B string, G string, and D string, right? We got this one right here. So we're going to be barring the 2nd fret on the B and the G strings, and then our third finger is going to reach over to the 4th fret of the D string. So we're playing a root third fifth. So that would make this a regular old F sharp minor triad, just like this one. Which is basically, these are the same triad, just in a different octave and a different shape based on where it is on the fretboard and what strings we're using. So there's that one, and then we have this next triad. Since we've already run into a regular F sharp minor triad, we can trust that the rest are pretty much going to be inversions. You're not going to run into the same one twice unless it's just the same one in a new octave. So in this case, we're taking our third finger, it's on the 7th fret of the D string, second finger is on 6th fret of the G string, fourth finger is on 7th fret of the B string. Now you could play it like this, like a D7 kind of shape. I just kind of like it like this. It just flows better when I'm moving from, because remember, we are going to be exercising these triads. This is just breaking them down and learning them, right? So that's how I like to play them. And we're starting on a third. So it's third, fifth, root. So that would be a F sharp minor triad in the first inversion. Finally, we have this. So this is just like that shape we learned when we were doing the A chord, right? But now we're up here. So third finger's on 11th fret of the D string, fourth finger's on 11th fret of G, second finger's on 10th fret of B. And we're starting on a fifth. So we have fifth, root, third. So this would be F sharp minor triad in the second inversion. Boom. Almost done. And then we have our last little chunk of strings, which is starting from the G string, D string, A string. And this one, we're taking our third finger on the 4th fret of A, fourth finger is on 4th fret of D, first finger is on 2nd fret of G. That's fifth, root, third. So F sharp minor triad in the second inversion. There. And then next up we have, this is a fun little shape. Our fourth finger is going to be on the 9th fret of the A string, second finger is on 7th fret of D. Might be a little bit of a stretch. And then our first finger is on the 6th fret of G. And this is root, third, fifth. So just a good old F sharp minor triad right here. And then finally we have our last triad of this whole exercise, finally, which is second finger on the 12th fret of the A string. First finger, you can just bar the 11th fret on the D and G strings. And this would be third, fifth, root. So F sharp minor in the first inversion. So we've just literally only played, even though we played like what seems like a million triad shapes, we're only playing 2 chords, right? We start with A major and F sharp minor. We have, just to recap, for A major, and then And then for F sharp minor. And then there. So all of those triads encompass just those two chords. They encompass every triad shape between a major and a minor chord that you could possibly find. It doesn't matter if it's B flat major or B flat minor or F major or C sharp minor, whatever it is, whatever the root note is, those same shapes will apply. So just by covering these two chords here that are related musically, right? We got A major and its relative minor, F sharp minor. That covers all the major and minor chords you could possibly encounter. And now that you know these, all you got to do for this exercise is just go through them, right? Turn a stopwatch on for going for a minute and run through them. Once you have them memorized, And here's the thing. Once you start running them through one at a time, then you can start mixing them up. And here's one thing I like to do. Once you really have these down, that may take a little bit of time. It's totally fine, right? Take all the time that you need. This is going to be a lot of memorization. I get it. So once you have those shapes memorized and you're starting to get familiar enough and comfortable enough with them to where you can run through them pretty quickly, then you can start mixing and matching between those two chords. And here's what I like to do. I'll start with the lowest triad that I can find on the fretboard, right? Starting with each chunk of string. So starting with the top chunk here, that's like the lowest one that's on the fretboard, and I'll walk it up. Then I got A, so starting with F sharp minor, and then A, then F sharp minor, then A, F sharp minor, A. And they sound nice next to each other, You give it some rhythm, it sounds musical, You do the same thing on the next chunk of strings. Keep it going. What's next? There we go. And then, see, it's great even for me. Sometimes I need a refresher, and this is the perfect exercise for that. So if you mix and match the triads a little bit, you can actually get something that sounds very musical and very song-like. So like I said, it excites the ears whilst also really exercising your fretboard memorization and also your ability to play all these triad shapes. So what we've just covered is an extremely powerful exercise to get you memorizing every single triad shape between major and minor chords. And once you've gone through playing the triad shapes and memorized them, just run through them for a minute a day just to keep it fresh in your mind. And soon enough, you're going to have these patterns understood so well that it doesn't matter what chord you're playing them over, you're going to know exactly what to do. And you're going to have plenty of options for advanced concepts like rhythm comping, so that instead of just playing your basic old bar chord shapes, you can start throwing in little triads so you can get really musical and really intelligent ideas that would otherwise be kind of boring. And all you got to do to adjust these triad shapes is just find the root note of whatever chord that it is that you're trying to reflect. But if you don't yet know how to find the root note to any key on your fretboard, I got just the thing that's going to show you how to do that in record time. And I'm speaking, of course, of that free gift I owe you now that you made it to the end of the lesson. And here it is. This bad boy is a lesson on how to instantly solo in any key. And the first thing you're going to learn is how to find any key on your fretboard, and I mean lickety-split. And not just that, but it'll show you how to rip some pretty cool solos in any key as well. And it's 100% yours, 100% free. All you gotta do is click the link here to grab your copy or check the link in the description box. Sometimes all it takes is just a little pattern recognition to be able to figure out how to navigate your fretboard. And the exercise that we just went over today is a perfect example of that.